This is Bible School Radio, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, and KMWC, Bethany. On the web at kdkr.org and on all your devices with the Live 365 app. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, luxury, brand, or quality, which one makes the most sense? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, Crown CEO and author Chuck Bentley is my special guest today. Talk a little bit of stewardship and Q&A that is coming from the Ask Chuck site at www.crown.org. Chuck, always great to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, it's been a while, Bob. It's good to be back, and thank you for having me.
So have you been world traveling again, or where have you been?
I just got back from Poland last week, and before that I was in Czech Republic. It just goes on and on and on. I'm in perpetual motion machine.
Yes, you are. Well, before we get down to some of these questions, I got a question for you. I was thinking today about your book, Seven Gray Swans, and and everything that's going on right now. And I thought to myself, is there a part 2 coming?
Well, if I keep coming on your program, I'm going to have to write a part 2, Bob. You are just so faithful in asking me. And I'll tell you what I'm tracking is the rise of central bank digital currency.
Right.
I think that's going to happen. I think it's inevitable. I also saw that stores are installing these palm readers now, so you can check out by just reading your palm print. 500 stores are coming in the U.S. with that technology. All of that moving us towards a cashless society, which I think is obviously tied to a loss of privacy and something we've got to be aware of.
Well, I will keep asking you until you write that book, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that people need to know.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, Chuck, let's talk a little bit about luxury brands. And boy, you are brave to get in the middle of this one. It says, I like buying luxury brands, but my husband could care less about the brand. He says he just wants quality. I argue we are getting both. Who is right? I want luxury brands. My husband wants quality. You know, it was interesting when I first read that. And I love the who's right. That's a dangerous place to be to answer that question. But I was looking at this thinking, you know, there's a lot of brand name products that are really kind of poor quality.
Well, that's true. And let me just ask you, Bob, are you a quality buyer or are you a luxury buyer, luxury brand?
Well, I don't really think of myself as a luxury brand. I probably like the way I'll buy something the way that it makes me feel. How about that? So
I think you're exactly right. We do a lot of purchasing by with the way something makes me feel, and one of the easiest examples is the difference between a Rolex and a Timex. You know, there's a vast difference in the price, but they both tell time. And, you know, one may not be very good quality, I grant you that, but another is definitely a status symbol. It stands for excellence and quality and enduring value. So I think it does depend upon our perspective of money, and so many things go into it. I tend to think that I personally am more of a value purchaser. I try not to buy something just because it's a luxury brand. I try not to fall for that. But a lot goes into that decision.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Tough question that they're grappling over. I mean, first of all, let's define luxury brands. What was the definition that you found?
Well, a luxury brand is an item that evokes it evokes quality. It's something that's supposedly exclusive. Marketers sort of sell it as a high-end lifestyle choice, something that for many people makes you feel better about yourself.
And what is the difference between what we would call a prudent purchase and one that is really about keeping up with the Joneses?
Well, a prudent purchase is something you can afford.
That helps.
You know, there's a saying that says act your wage, and a lot of times we will buy a luxury brand way over what is reasonable or what we can afford. I see people do that with cars. I had a friend call me wanting to buy, and I'm not picking on this brand, but he wanted to buy a Cadillac Escalade, you know, an SUV, and really was locked in on it and felt like they had to stretch to do it. But, you know, it was that quality versus keeping up with the Joneses type of argument. And I sent him an article that the number one brand of automobiles driven by people of wealth is a Toyota.
Yes.
And this person was shocked. And he said, what? Why would somebody drive a dual Toyota when they could have a Cadillac Escalade? And I said, because they get more value per mile than that Cadillac Escalade. Have you done your research about repair cost, about maintenance and repairs over the lifetime of owning that vehicle? And he had not done any of that.
Right.
And so he was sort of caught in that trap of, I want to look good. I want a car that says, hey, I'm successful.
Yeah, and you bring up a very important point that people don't do, and it's how much is it going to cost for me to maintain this vehicle? I mean, you could be talking about $4,000 brake jobs. You could be talking about $300 a tire. I mean, the cost can get just out of control.
I've had two friends buy their favorite luxury sports car. I won't pick on the brand, but they bought their favorite one, kind of, a two-seater type sports car. And after they took it in for their first service, I'm talking about oil change and just the normal things, I think it cost $1,500. And they traded it. They were like, this is crazy. If I get a scratch on this car, it's just going to cost me so much money. And they both got rid of it. So a lot goes into making that decision to determine what you're really paying for, what it's really going to cost you to own something.
The question comes up about our children and the values of spending and stewardship, getting bombarded by all the marketing and materialism. How can we instill the right values in our kids?
Well, I think it begins with teaching a child that just to say no. It's really, really helpful to tell your children when they're growing up, no, we can't do that. You can't drive a brand new car to high school. Right. Used cars are what we're going to do in our family. I have 4 boys, and one of them loves to go to thrift shopping. Just loves it. And
my son does too.
He had on a pair of high-quality loafers, these leather loafers this weekend he was wearing to church, and I thought, man, those are like $200 shoes, and he got them for $20 at a thrift store. And I was actually really proud of him because he sort of solved that issue of quality and value.
Yes.
He got shoes that he wanted for $20, and he could have probably gone out and spent the full $250, but he appreciated the fact that you have to work hard to have $250 to buy a pair of shoes. And he didn't want to invest that much in what he was just going to wear to church.
This is a big deal amongst that generation. I know that my son loves to go do this. And he's got a friend that goes in and looks for values and turns around and sells them on eBay.
Yeah.
And probably makes some pretty good money.
I have another friend doing that. Yeah, I have another friend doing it in high school. He says he's making about $2,000 a month reselling stuff he finds in thrift stores. And it's a business to him. And, of course, if you can teach your children to learn to make money, as opposed to just spending money.
Right.
You've really done good there.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Chuck Bentley's my guest today, and here to talk a little bit about stewardship and some of the Q&A that comes through their website, crown.org. If you want more information about Chuck, you can go to crown.org. And also just check it when you go there. Promise me you'll check out what this phenomenal ministry is doing and how God's using this ministry and using leadership that Chuck provides to reach so many people for the kingdom of God. You had a quote in here, and I wanted to read this. It says, rather than using common sense, waiting, and trusting God, some people are caught up in the need for luxury. It boils down to what you believe about money, how you use or steward God's money. Go a little bit deeper into that.
Well, Bob, you have to ask yourself, is this all there is? Is this really our only chance to experience nice things, or is there something more to come? And when you realize that Scripture tells us to lay up for ourselves treasures in heaven, not on earth, then it's okay to deny yourself things that you want here. I've got to admit, there's a lot of things I would like to have, Bob, that I don't have now. And I tell my wife every now and then in jest, okay, honey, you keep saying no to the Harley Davidson that I want to ride around on the weekends. I'll hopefully get one in heaven. Maybe I can have a Harley in heaven. And she says that's terrible theology, and I'm sure it is, because I don't need a Harley in heaven. But I also don't need one now. I can find a way around that and to say it's okay. I don't have to have all my desires fulfilled because there's something more to come. And I would rather use money to be purposeful. I like to think of money as how can it be used for other benefit? How can it be used to bless other people? Bob, I have to tell you, over the Memorial Day weekend, I went through my files, some old files, and asked me to clean up my office. And I found a document that I had written when I was 23 years old, and it was my life purpose statement. I don't even know what possessed me to do it. But I said I want to strive towards financial freedom so that I can use resources for the benefit of others.
Wow.
I said that when I was 23, and I shared it with my children on our family text, and a couple of my boys chimed back, Dad, you've lived that out. That's how you've lived your life. And for them to see that,
yes.
I think it's more important than what, for me having a Harley or having the kind of things that the world tells us that we need to have to feel good about ourselves.
I kind of got a kick out of what you had in the article about rationalization and how people justify luxury brand spending. None of this applied to me at all. That's why I was laughing about it, of course. What are some of the ways that this happens?
Well, one of the things we do is that we just want satisfaction. We want satisfaction now, and it feels good. Even if you're totally able to afford it and it's not a stretch, it just feels good to surround yourself with things that give you a sense of accomplishment. And so it's easy to just say, I can do this. It's no big deal. It's a small percentage of my net worth or small percentage of my income. And I'm going to go ahead and do it because what it does for me. And I think men fall into that just as often as women do. Sometimes we'll even put our financial security at risk for present satisfaction. I had a friend that lost an interview for a really big job, and the first thing he did was go out and buy a new car. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, you didn't get the good job. Why did you do that? And he said, I did it to feel good about myself because I felt so rejected. And a new car makes me feel good about myself. And he said, but now I've got 6 years of car payments, and I didn't get the job. So we have to really keep our guard up of how things make us feel.
Talk about how you can, as you write in the article, count the costs before spending money.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what's my motivation? Really, why do I want something that's nice or expensive? And is it a need? Can I find an affordable substitute? What's the message is it going to send to my children? What's the long-term benefit? What am I giving up? What's the opportunity lost by making this investment? And would it be pleasing to the Lord? And I'm not trying to put people on a guilt trip for having nice things, but it is worthwhile to tap the brakes. My wife always says, Chuck, all that new gadgets, every one of them are going to end up worthless. They're going to end up in the landfill one day. Do you really want to increase the amount of gadgets in the landfill? And so, she keeps me honest. She makes me think twice about it. I don't have the latest and greatest iPhone. I don't have the latest and greatest of really anything, partly because I'm pretty content with what I have now. And my motive isn't to keep up with everybody else. I've long since outgrown that.
So we're talking about a couple who's I think it was the wife sent in a question about what's the better thing, luxury brands or quality. What would you, if you were one-on-one with this couple, what would you tell them that the Bible says about it?
Well, the Bible says we're to lay up treasures in heaven. I think they both have a point. It is possible to get luxury and quality, but it's also possible to get quality that's pretty luxurious, and you don't have to pay for it. Bob, I own a piece of luggage that's lifetime guaranteed, and it was expensive, and I thought, well, I'll buy it once and it'll last forever. Well, it was really expensive, but I have another friend who goes and gets the cheapest luggage at Walmart, used it for 2 years, and he says over his lifetime, he's going to get to change models, change colors, enjoy it. If it wears out, he'll throw it away, and he'll never spend as much as I spent for my lifetime guarantee. And it made me realize, I think I may have fallen for the luxury brand on my luggage, because I saw that as a need. But the reality is God's laid up so much more for us in heaven, and it's so much better to orient our lives towards those things, Bob. We don't need a Louis Vuitton handbag. I don't need fancy things, because God's got something planned for us much better.
This next question is a real tough one to answer. Can you still buy a car on a budget? And it's tough to say that. I get reports that the tariffs are definitely affecting car sales, and the costs have gone up. I've gotten reports that hasn't happened yet. Really hard to find true value on specifically because I think it makes sense to own a pre-owned car. Your advice is to take a balanced approach. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting because it's become a major life decision. With the average used car now priced at $25,000, Bob, that's a big decision. I remember growing up, I think my first car was $800. I had an old beater, and then I had one for maybe $1,200. But to look at a $25,000 vehicle, and then to think that the tariffs may drive the cost way up. I was written a question about that because someone was about to panic, like, okay, because of these tariffs, I've got to go grab a car immediately and go way over budget. But I think a balanced approach is to do your research, don't get in a hurry, and never think you've got to go out and grab something because of scarcity. There's going to be something available for you. Don't get in a big hurry. It's far better to wait and to stay out of a financial bind than it is to. You remember the old saying that you can get house poor. Well, you can also get car poor. And there's so many people falling behind on these expensive car payments now. And so we're trying to help people avoid doing that.
Yeah, and you can take the payment out for like 84 months, and you'll just be paying on it indefinitely.
Yeah, a short-term mortgage is really what that feels like. I think 25% of all people buying a new car today are paying $1,000 a month or more for their car payment. And that just doesn't make sense to me. It's not worth it to me to tariffs or no tariffs. But I don't think we've felt the full effect of tariffs.
No.
And as you know, Bob, one day they're on, one day they're off, one day they're coming, one day they're delayed. We're not really sure. So it's difficult to make any kind of decision based on an assumption that the price is about to go sky high.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because in the article you say it is a used car or pre-owned car seller's market. Talk a little bit about that. I think sometimes people hear that but don't really know what that means.
Well, what that means is if you have a high-quality, low-mileage used car, there's going to be big demand for that because it's so much better than going out and having to buy new right now. And so a seller's market means you can probably get top dollar if you've got a quality used car. So hang on to it, or be sure you know what you have. I'm not one to just trade in a car. I always feel like I'm giving up about 20 or 25% of the value if I trade it into the dealer, because they know the value and they're going to discount it so that they can get the premium price on the used car market. I happen to have a lot of experience buying used cars, Bob, because I've had 4 children, and we've even helped our grandchildren, buy cars. I've had some that have totaled their cars. I don't know how many cars I've been a part of buying used over the years. But I think that it is always nice to find a high-quality, low-mileage used car, and those do go fast. Usually sell the day of when they come on the market.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Chuck Bentley is with me today, and we're talking about some Q&As that have come through the site crown.org. Go check that out. You can get more information about Chuck, some of Chuck's books, and just a lot of great information at that site crown.org. In the book, you talk about a U.S. News and World Report article about timing, and what's interesting, and I've always given this advice and lived out this advice about buying a car at the end of the month. It's magic. It is.
Yeah. They've got to meet quota, and you can walk in some dealerships and they've got their sales numbers for the month on the board. And if they're a little bit short, they're ready to make a deal. And usually it's just a short window of time, but they're under pressure to get inventory off the lot. So buying at the end of the month is a really, really good tip.
Maybe the answer is to, and this is a quote out of the article, maybe the answer is to determine where you put your value. In the article, you say to put the value in prayer. I love that. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, value, when you think about a vehicle, you want value, not vanity. And value means that you're going to get a low cost per mile driven. You're not going to be hassled with a lot of maintenance and repair, and you're not going to be paying crazy prices just to get the oil changed or the fancy kind of tires on the car. It's just transportation. And sometimes we don't pray and ask the Lord for what we need. And I've been, doing what I do for 25 years, and over the years I've just heard story after story of how God provides. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we just look at our checking account or how much we can borrow from the bank when we need a vehicle. But we need to talk to the Lord and wait on the Lord and let Him show us exactly what He wants for us when it comes to a car.
Well, Chuck, great to have you on. It's always a blessing to me for you to come on and talk a little bit about stewardship. I always love to have you. And I look forward to our next time together. And until then, I want to invite people to go to crown.org and check out the site. Lots of great information there.
Bob, thanks for what you're doing with Prudent Money, not only the program, but also the great advice you give your clients. And I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Chuck. Take care and God bless.
God bless you.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. It really is interesting. I follow these trends pretty closely about car prices and that kind of thing, so it always interests me. And it really depends on the actual brand of the vehicle on whether they're really raising prices. But I think the good news is I haven't seen prices go up as much as maybe the media is talking about it. There's still some people who are keeping some dealerships and car automobile places that are keeping prices down a bit, and not. But I do believe that once you give a dealership the okay to keep up with the rest of the dealerships, I'm sure those prices will go up. So interesting times that we live in. This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.